So Elon Musk just did this really unfiltered interview where he kind of put all the politics aside and just went straight back to his roots, engineering the future. For all the builders, the engineers, the futurists out there watching, we're going to break down the core principles he shared. Let's dive right in.
Right out of the gate, he drops this absolute bombshell. He says superintelligence isn't some far-off thing in the distant future. He thinks it could happen this year. I mean, that incredible pace, that urgency, it really sets the stage for everything else he talks about. And to really understand how he thinks, we've broken this down into 3 simple parts. First, we're going to look at his core engineer's mindset. Then, we'll see how that exact mindset got tested by brutal reality. And finally, we'll unpack what he sees as our ultimate mission as a species, navigating the rise of that superintelligence he's talking about.
All right, so let's start at the very beginning, the foundation, the engineer's mindset. And this isn't about business school tactics or anything like that. For Musk, this is a way of seeing the world, and it's all based on the laws of physics.
This right here, this is the secret sauce. It's called first principles thinking. And the idea is, instead of just looking at how things have always been done, reasoning by analogy, you boil a problem all the way down to its most fundamental, undeniable truths, the axioms. And then you build your solution up from there. Musk literally calls this a superpower, and you can see he applies it to just about everything.
So, okay, how does this actually work in the real world? Well, when he started SpaceX, he asked this exact question. For decades, the entire aerospace industry just kind of assumed a new rocket would cost about the same as an old one. But Musk, he went back to basics, back to the fundamentals. And the logic here is, it's actually beautifully simple. He just listed out all the raw materials in a rocket, aluminum, copper, all that stuff. And then he looked up their market price. And what he found was kind of shocking. The actual stuff a rocket is made of only accounted for 1 or 2% of its traditional price tag. That meant the other 98%, well, that wasn't a law of physics. It was just inefficiency. And that inefficiency, that was the real problem that SpaceX was built to solve.
This engineering mindset, it even extends to his personal philosophy. He basically says that if your ego gets way bigger than your actual ability, you break your connection with reality. And for all the engineers watching, he puts it perfectly. You break your reinforcement learning loop. You literally stop learning from your mistakes because your ego just won't let you see them.
So you have this clear physics-based mindset, but how does it hold up when it collides head-on with the real world? Well, that brings us to our second act, building against the odds. This is where the theory gets tested by fire.
You have to understand, 2008 was just an absolute nightmare year for him. I mean, just picture this. In just a few months, SpaceX has its 3rd rocket in a row literally blow up. At the exact same time, the global financial crisis hits and Tesla's funding completely evaporates. He has just enough money left for one more launch. That's it.
I mean, the stakes just could not have been any higher. This wasn't some minor setback. This was the end of the line. If that 4th rocket failed, both SpaceX and Tesla would have been totally wiped out, joining what he calls the graveyard of prior rocket startups.
And while all this is happening, you have to remember the public perception. It wasn't exactly on his side. He was getting mocked constantly. People called him the internet guy, this software millionaire who was just playing around with hardware he didn't understand. The whole thing sounded, as he even admits, completely nuts.
And the comeback story is it's pure Hollywood. First, that 4th launch. It works. Then, right before Christmas, NASA throws SpaceX a lifeline with a massive contract. And then, and you can't make this up, on the last possible hour of the last possible day, 6 p.m. on Christmas Eve, Tesla's financing finally comes through. He said they literally would have bounced payroll 2 days after Christmas. That's how close it was.
So that incredible survival story, it really sets the stage for our final act. Because once his companies were on stable ground, Musk's focus shifted to what he sees as the biggest, most profound challenge in all of human history: navigating the rise of superintelligence.
Okay, so what is he even talking about here? When Musk says digital superintelligence, he's not talking about an AI that's just better at chess or Go. He means an AI that is smarter than the smartest human you can think of, in every single field. And like we saw at the top, he thinks it's right around the corner.
So in this new AI era, he basically says humanity has 2 paths. We can be spectators, just sit on the sidelines and watch this whole new reality get built. Or we can be participants. We can be the engineers and the builders who are actively shaping it. He's really framing this as a direct call to action for people like us.
Now, he's actually pretty optimistic about it all, which is surprising. He puts the odds of a great outcome at around 80%. But that leaves a 10 to 20% chance of, well, annihilation. And that is a terrifyingly high number when you're talking about the fate of everyone and everything. The stakes just don't get any higher.
In this new world, it won't just be digital. Musk predicts that, yeah, within our lifetimes, humanoid robots are going to be everywhere. And eventually, they'll outnumber humans by 5, maybe even 10 to 1. I mean, just think about how that completely changes everything. Labor, the economy, society itself.
So why? Why do any of this? Why build the rockets? Why develop the AI? For Musk, it all comes back to this one really powerful image. He sees all of consciousness as this fragile, tiny little candle in a vast, dark universe. And for him, becoming a multiplanetary species and safely developing AI, those are the two most important things we can possibly do to make sure that tiny candle does not go out.
So how do we make sure that 20% chance of doom doesn't happen? Well, his prescription is actually pretty clear. He says AI must be relentlessly truth-seeking. You can't force it to believe things that aren't true just because they're politically correct. It has to have empathy for humanity built into its core. And this is critical. Power can't be centralized. You need several powerful AIs competing with each other to avoid a single point of failure.
And all of that leads to this final, really mind-bending thought he leaves us with. Beyond creating abundance, beyond changing our world, what if superintelligence could finally answer our biggest questions? What if it could solve the Fermi paradox and just tell us why the universe seems so quiet? Maybe, just maybe, AI won't just be a tool for us, but the telescope that finally shows us our real place in the cosmos.